Next, on Anatomy of King. When a man sits down with a blank page, he's not writing, he's returning to himself. Most men don't realize this, but the loudest battles you fight aren't out there in the world. They're in your mind, your patterns. They're in the parts of you that you've never slowed down long enough to understand. And that's why journaling is so powerful. Because it forces you to stop running from the one person you can't escape. Yourself. Let's unpack that. There's a war inside of every man that nobody sees. Not the war with the world or with responsibility and expectations. The quiet war. The internal war. The one fought in silence behind the eyes, underneath the armor. Most men lose that war. Not because we're weak, but because we're unarmed. A man without a place to process becomes a man who reacts. And a man without a place to think becomes a man who spirals. And a man without a place to confront himself becomes a man who avoids himself. Journaling is not writing. It's weaponry. It is the sharpening stone for the mind. It is the pressure valve for the heart. It is the mirror that does not lie. And every man who refuses to face himself on that page eventually faces himself and his consequences. I want to break down journaling in 8 truths. The first truth: your mind is too loud to lead you. It is not a leader. Your mind is a reactor. It fires. It flinches. It loops. It protects. It panics. It does everything except guide you. Guidance comes from clarity, and clarity comes from slowing down. Slowing down comes from writing. When you journal, you force your thoughts to move at a speed of your pen. And that speed is slow enough for truth to catch up. A loud mind makes weak decisions. A clear mind makes strong ones. Journaling is how a man earns clarity. Truth number 2. Emotions don't disappear. They redirect. In this whole man up, shake it off masculinity that we were taught, we still have emotions that don't evaporate. They reroute. See, unprocessed emotions become irritability and withdrawal, numbness, overthinking, and impulsive choices. See, a journal is not where you vent. It's where you translate. You take the raw, unfiltered chaos inside you and you turn it into a language you can understand. A man who can name what he feels can control what he feels. A man who can control what he feels can control his life. The third truth: a man who doesn't confront himself repeats himself. Patterns don't break because you want them to. Patterns break because you expose them. A journal is the one place you can't lie and still feel like a man. On the page, your excuses look flimsy. Your cycles look obvious. Your avoidance looks childish. Your truth looks undeniable. Self-confrontation is masculine. Avoidance is not. And every time you write, you are saying, I refuse to be a man who hides from himself. That alone separates you from 90% of men. Fourth truth: Identity is not found, it is built. Identity is not discovered, identity is a construction. Every entry is a brick, every reflection is a beam, every confession is a foundation, every intention is a blueprint. You are not journaling about your life, you are journaling about your architecture. A man becomes who he writes about consistently. If you write like a victim, you become one. If you write like a leader, you become one. If you write like a man in transition, you become one. If you write like a king, you become one. Identity is repetition with intention. Truth number 5. Journaling is time travel. Past you leaves wisdom. Present you does the work. Future you benefits from the discipline. Journaling is the only place where all 3 versions of you sit at the same table. Past you says, here's what we learned. Present you says, here's what we're doing. And future you says, thank you. A man who journals is a man who refuses to let his future self-inherit his current confusion. Truth number 6. Overstimulation is the enemy of masculinity. The modern world is engineered to scatterbrain you. You got notifications, more noise, opinions, distractions, dopamine traps, mental clutter. Overstimulation steals attention, patience, and presence, emotional bandwidth, and self-awareness. Overstimulation steals discipline, and journaling restores it all. It is the antidote to a world designed to distract you. It is the ritual that reclaims your mind from the chaos around you. A man who journals is a man who refuses to be mentally hijacked. Truth number 7, lucky number 7. A man without reflection becomes a man without direction. How can you lead a life you never pause to examine? See, reflection is masculine. Direction is masculine. Intention is masculine. Journaling is the intersection of all 3. It is where you ask, who am I becoming? What am I tolerating? What am I avoiding? What am I repeating? What am I building? What am I lying about? What am I ready to change? A man who reflects becomes a man who leads himself. A man who leads himself becomes a man others trust to lead. The 8th truth. Discipline is not built in the gym. It's built in the mind. The gym builds muscle. Journaling builds discipline. Discipline is not about doing the hard things. Discipline is about doing intentional things. When you journal, you practice consistency, honesty, and self-awareness, accountability, and emotional control. You practice mental order. These are the muscles that make every other muscle meaningful. See, a man who journals becomes a man who follows through. Gentlemen, the man who writes becomes the man who leads. Journaling is not a hobby. It's not a trend, and it's not a soft practice. It's a masculine ritual, a leadership ritual, a clarity ritual. It's a self-respect ritual. A man who journals is a man who refuses to live unconsciously. A man who journals is a man who refuses to be emotionally illiterate. A man who journals is a man who refuses to be mentally sloppy. A man who journals is a man who refuses to be at war with himself. The power of journaling is simple. It turns a man from reactive to intentional, from chaotic to clear, from avoidant to accountable. It turns a man from drifting to directed, wounded to wise, from boy to king. And every king needs a throne, but before he ever sits on one, he builds one inside himself, one page at a time. And remember, what you don't change, you choose. And this change can't afford excuses. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.